I'm not going to speak too much. I'm going to let the technology do the speaking. As I was listening to the previous speaker, I was thinking, how am I going to make the link from Aristotle to technology? So the link is Aristotle to Star Wars. And what I'm going to try to show you today is a couple of innovations or leading things that might lead to innovations that we think might be relevant to the debates and stories we're going through. Now, of course, it could also be a 2001: A Space Odyssey if you want to draw your film analogies. You know, so how do we actually embrace and take advantage of technology? So I'm going to show you two videos. The first is intended to get across just quite the scale of what technology change might embrace. It's a cartoon. It's a animation. It's been live on YouTube now for a couple of months. It's had somewhere in the order of 4.5 million hits on YouTube. And Catherine, I can't see where she is now, but your comment in the last session, all right, if you think that technology is way ahead, you haven't seen anything yet. So the point of that is each one of those little dots is an individual atom. And if you go on YouTube, you can actually see how they made the movie and why they made the movie, which is really to explore the art of how far can you actually go in manipulating technology. The message that I really want to give you, though, as part of that is, what does it mean? Well, we're all used to our smartphones, right? They're going to get smaller, faster, and better. Now, the question is, how many people had a smartphone 5 years ago? Oh, sorry, first question, how many people have got one today? Pretty well everybody. How many people had one 5 years ago? How many people had one 10 years ago? Almost no one. There's a wonderful statistic that's a couple of years old now that social media is used by 75% of homeless people. Right? You know, these are people who we assume have no access to net technology, but actually they do have access to net technology. And actually the whole focus, that statistic, by the way, is 2 years old. So the whole way that the technology is getting pervasive and being used by people is radically changing. And we haven't seen anything yet. Because if you go on YouTube, these things are getting expanded. Have you seen anything like the Samsung flexible screen? Not only can you have a flexible screen, but this actually is a little, like a little block thing, like a remote controller, and you press the button and out comes the screen. These are working live prototypes. They're not released in products yet, but you can actually go online. If you type in Samsung flexible screens, you'll actually see some quite amazing videos of just what is in the labs. And I haven't seen the announcements yet from Apple today, but I'm expecting that there's going to be some announcements here at the Apple Developer Conference that will also start changing some of these types of things. So a few years ago at this conference, somebody asked a provocative question, and I can't remember who it was, but I think it was a gentleman from Wharton that asked the question, how many of you actually put these in the hands of your caseworkers? And the answer at that time was no one. So I'm going to ask the question again, how many of you put these in the hands of your caseworkers? A few, great, good. It's starting to take effect. But the next stage of evolution is not just in how does technology get smaller and more innovative. basically people are looking to how do you actually incorporate thinking, new ways of thinking. How many people here have heard about Watson and the Jeopardy program? So that became quite popular. That was a research project by IBM to start looking at thinking computers. How can you reverse the algorithm in such a way that you can actually start applying real thinking? Well, I'm going to show you a second video now that is something that IBM released a couple of months ago called 5 in 5. 5 innovations that we think are going to really, truly transform technology in the next 5 years. And I'm just going to show you the summary video. If you actually go again on YouTube, you can type in 5 in 5 and you can see all of the in-depth videos. But I just want to show you where we think the thinking algorithms are actually going to go into the future.
5 years from now, you will be able to touch through your phone.
Computers will be able to not only look at images, but understand them.
Computers will hear what matters.
The computer system will know what I like to eat better than I do.
Computers will have a sense of smell.
With all due respect to current technology, our computers today are just large calculators. They calculate very fast, and they calculate lots and lots of data, but they really don't think.
So I think that cognitive computing is in its simplest form. How do we get computers to behave and think and interact the way humans do?
If a cognitive computer can experience its environment, by definition, it can act upon it to improve it. And that's a unique capability compared to what we have today.
In today's world, we always provide imperfect answers because we don't have all the information. What cognitive systems will allow us to do is to be able to collect that information from what is seen, from what is heard, from what is felt, and use that information to provide a more accurate answer to the problem at hand.
So cognitive computing, I can't even say the word. But, so 3 messages I want to sort of bring up and have a think about as we go through the rest of this symposium that really come from the idea of the technology and what can technology actually do. The first is, I think in this day and age, what can be done is really unlimited by your imagination. The technology now is so advanced and becoming so rapid that actually, to pick up on some of the points that people made in their questions, the business models are actually what needs to be driving the use of the technology. The technology can solve pretty well any of the questions that are out there today. So the question then is, how can we be more imaginative on how we can actually impact people's lives through the use of technology? There are lots of examples of that around the world, and tomorrow I'll talk about one case study in Catalonia where we're actually using the technology to bring people together. And actually, that's my third point: is how can we actually use the technology to actually bring people together? So hopefully that inspires you and gets you thinking. And for the lawyers in the room, yes, it brings a new set of legal questions that we have to think about. But I'm sure that will be something to keep you awake at night. So.
I'm delighted to be here today, and I have to say that between last night and this morning, it's reaffirmed my absolute solid belief that everybody in this room is here because you have a passion for the issues that we're dealing with, and I hope I share your passion in all ways, but particularly with respect to this issue of cross-boundary information sharing. I've kind of spent my life in that particular realm, and I want to suggest to you some fundamental premises that I hope you'll join me in establishing as a way to begin. I think Ori would have added this to his excellent discussion of the bigger issues if he'd have thought of it, but some famous philosopher, I forget who, said once that where you end up is a function of where you start and where you begin. And I think we have to begin with some premises as we begin to tackle this issue of cross-boundary information sharing and talk about some of the opportunities and challenges that face us in this. And I would assert to you, and I hope you will completely agree with me, that the thing we have to start with is that there must be no boundaries. We have created artificial boundaries by the way we've organized ourselves and by the way Congress has appropriated funding, by the way grant programs have been created, and by the way we have focused on organizations, not on purposes and missions. And the simple assertion that I think we all have to accept is that government services and functions that we're used to dealing with in individual settings, such as public health, social services, and justice, can no longer stand alone. And in fact, we have to be committed to the demolition of those silos. And I suggest that strong language as opposed to the milder language of building bridges, because some of these silos are in fact the cause of the problem that has impeded our ability to promote the useful wellness of American families, their safety and their stability. I'm not the first person to make this point. Bill Bratton, who's the former commissioner of police in New York City and chief of police in Los Angeles, and well known to many of you, and Zach Tuman from the Harvard Kennedy School of Government just wrote a book called Collaborate or Perish. There's no better sum of the entire purpose in which we have to focus ourselves than this message. And I commend their book to you, but in it they talk about the fact that any organization, whether it's a private company or a government entity, is on the way to abolition if it's not reinventing itself and thinking about how it can leverage the resources that are accessible to it from other organizations. And this affects this topic of this symposium as much as it does any other topic. Collaboration is the way that we're going to move forward. So there are three factors that have influenced where we are today, and any good student of public administration or industry, for that matter, is going to look at what environment in which we're beginning this work. I don't have to tell you about what's happened with the Great Recession and the loss of economic power to our citizens in this country and the loss of budgets to our agencies. So we're living with that. And during the period that we've experienced this Great Recession, we've had simultaneously a number of revolutions in technology. As was just pointed out to you, the smartphone is still a relatively new entity that we're trying to understand how to deal with it. And even though many of you have not dealt your caseworkers a smartphone, you're dealing with the issue of BYOD, bring your own device. IT managers in every organization are struggling with how do I maintain privacy and security when people are coming into work with their iPhones. But it's not just the phones, it's all the other innovations from technology that we're faced with in the midst of dealing with these budgetary crises. Then, at the same time, let's just think about this, at the same time we're dealing with a recession, we're dealing with unbelievable revolutionary changes in technology. At the same time, we're dealing with horrendous paradigm shifts in the delivery of service. From the Affordable Care Act to the new recognition of the importance of collaboration across governments, from changes in how the federal government's operating, organizational changes, new models of service and innovation in service delivery are the mantra of many of the federal government programs. Now, if you think about these three things happening together, what many people have suggested is that this indeed is the perfect storm. Now, it's a perfect storm in that it's an enabler because a number of, and Doug Robinson is here from the National Association of CIOs in the states who have gone to their legislatures and say, you know what, we're facing this revolution in technology, we're facing this recession, we're facing changes in the way people do business, that's why I need a new budget. So it's an enabler in the sense of saying we're in the midst of this enormous change in how we operate in society, and it is the perfect storm. It's also the perfect nightmare, and to many CIOs and policymakers throughout the country, because we're absolutely enveloped with new ideas, new pressures for collaboration, for technology, the emergence of new technologies that just absolutely change things. We're also drinking out of a fire hose of information. 90% of all the data that's been generated since the world began has been generated in the last 18 months. It's an astonishing figure. Every day we create 2.5 quintillion bytes of data. Do you even know what a quintillion is? I have no friggin' idea. So here we are, and during all this, in the last 10 years, we've been attacked by the children of the internet. And we have yet to figure out what to do with these children in many cases. We have tons of internet technology that's been derived from these wonderful things we've built, like the idea of a single address that could talk to any node anywhere in the world. An IP, an internet protocol that it links all the computers in the world better than any government agency has ever figured out how to do. We have social media that, as you know, is just overwhelming us when we have people like Rachel talking about Twittering. You know, Rachel's specialty is adopting children, not in technology, but she's now a Twitterer. We have smartphones, as we've talked about. Apps. The new world of technology is devouring apps. There are close to 1 million apps for the iPhone alone. 1 million. There are 4,000 millionaires in this country that Apple has created by paying people $1.99 for apps that are all over the place. You can't even absorb all the new apps that are created every day. Just in the public safety world alone, cities and counties are creating apps every day that are exposing their citizens to new ways to communicate with government. And of course, the biggie in this is really cloud computing. And this is a phenomenon that's going to impact every single one of you within the next 5 years, because we're already, as individuals, using the cloud for storing our music and our videos and our photos. And you know, governments are rapidly embracing the idea of cloud computing. And Doug will tell you that 25% of the state CIOs are introducing cloud computing in their states. And you will be using cloud computing at some point in the near future. And that's going to change how you operate, because all of a sudden, smaller agencies who have never had the capability before to use computer technology are going to have access to it, because they don't have to buy their own system. They can use the internet and get to a cloud provider. But it's going to open the doors to enormous issues of privacy, security, and the preservation of civil rights. The reason all this is happening now, and it's almost a new phenomenon that I submit to you that's helpful to us, and as we think about some of these things to move toward, is that we're demanding instant access to knowledge, not just information. When we have a Hurricane Katrina, or the tornadoes in Oklahoma, or any other issue of importance, people want to have at their fingertips the access to the knowledge that will help us deal with those issues and problems. Or for an individual child who is serviced by 10 different social services agencies, or bringing that data to bear on a decision in real time, right now, today, as I'm making the decision, not 6 months from now, after I pay a programmer to write another report that takes me forever to get out of the computer. Those days are over. Computers are no longer about data processing. They're about creating insight. And that's really the message that you heard from IBM a moment ago, that the days that we built computers to record things, stick them away, make them available, run statistics, is no longer relevant. We're looking for insight. So I propose that you all endorse this axiom that many of us have come to believe, and it is an axiom, that information sharing is at the heart of everything we want to do to improve public health and safety and the quality of justice in America. Because I don't care what problem it is you're trying to solve, at the heart of it is, how can we share the information that promotes better decision making? How can we make all of the information that a caseworker needs in a healthcare environment, a community supervision environment? We use a lot of different examples of why this is true. And it really is, I'm going to talk about a few of them. So one of the ways that we've attacked this problem is by creating standards for allowing us to at least speak the same language as we move data from system A to system B. The National Information Exchange Model has been a highly successful way to build a vocabulary that now allows us to understand and accept a common definition of adult or a common definition of case. You realize how many people in this room have a different definition of the word case? I bet you half of you would have your own different definition. But NEAM provides a way to assemble the stakeholders, agree with the proven methodology on what those terms are, and to provide a way of translating information from a health system to a social service system, no matter what the purposes are. NEAM, I'm going to give you one example of how this has worked in the area of prescription drug monitoring. This is not blue sky, this is actual reality. It's been done. Prescription drug monitoring is a big problem in this country. You know, because, and I'm sure most of you are well aware of the fact that prescription drug abuse is a much bigger problem than the abuse of illegal drugs like cocaine and heroin. Over 15 million Americans, mostly children, abuse prescription drugs over a 10-year period. And it's still true today because, in fact, recent studies have shown that 1 out of every 5 middle school children has abused prescription drugs. 40% of teenagers believe that they're safer than illegal drugs. 29% believe that prescription pain relievers are not addictive. And in response to this, states created a way to collect data from pharmacies on the sale of prescription drugs and build repositories at the state level, but there was no way for the states to exchange information. So, for example, if you ran out of doctors to get your pain pills from in California and decided to go to Nevada, those two states were unable to share that information, not only to find fraud and abuse, but to educate the substance abuse agencies about possible addiction programs. So using NEAM, we created an exchange standard that now allows the states, every state in the country that has such a program, to peek into the other states' records to accumulate data on things like doctor shopping and fraudulent prescriptions. So now we have empowered the prescribers, doctors, pharmacists, pharmacies, boards of pharmacy, and law enforcement agencies and substance addiction treatment programs, consumer protection agencies in all those states who have created a program that are participating in this, so that it's possible to now share on a nationwide basis this information and deal with this problem. So, you know, it's this kind of example of using standards, building the governance process, building the mechanisms for taking this on one exchange at a time to solve the problems of how do we share information across these domains, to build one nation, indivisible, and one world working in concert. Thank you.